For as long as we can remember, we've had this picture of the ancient Maya, right? These mysterious people whose incredible stone temples were just swallowed by a totally unforgiving jungle. But what if that whole picture we have in our heads is, well, just plain wrong? Because right now, a revolutionary technology is basically peeling back that jungle canopy like a lid on a box. And what it's showing us underneath is rewriting the story of the Maya on a scale we honestly never ever imagined.
So let's go back a bit. When explorers like John Lloyd Stevens first stumbled upon these ruins back in the 1840s, this is what they saw. This incredibly romantic, almost tragic image of a lost world. This quote, it just perfectly captures that feeling, doesn't it? These once great cities completely reclaimed by nature, their very names forgotten to time. For more than 100 years, this idea of spectacular ruins being eaten by the jungle, that was our entire understanding.
And yeah, that image really stuck. We thought of these grand but totally isolated cities, almost like they were islands in a vast green sea of jungle. But here's the question. What if the jungle wasn't just surrounding the cities? What if it was actually hiding most of the civilization itself? This right here gets to the heart of the problem. For decades, decades, archaeologists literally walked right past massive, man-made structures, just shrugging them off as natural hills. Get this, as recently as 2015, a thing everyone thought was just a hill at the site of Toni Na, turns out it was a 75-meter-tall pyramid, one of the biggest in the Americas. The true scale of the Maya world was literally hidden in plain sight. So how in the world do you see through a jungle that's so dense it can hide entire pyramids? Well, you basically give archaeology a superpower. Let's talk about a technology called LiDAR. This quote is honestly the perfect way to think about it. Just imagine for a second that you could digitally erase every single tree, every vine, all of it, just to see the bare earth underneath. And you could do it all without cutting down a single leaf. That's exactly what LiDAR does. And believe me, it is a complete game changer. Okay, so how does this X-ray vision actually work? Well, LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. And what that really means is you have a plane or maybe a drone flying over a site and it's firing millions of laser pulses at the ground. Then a sensor on board measures precisely how long it takes for each one of those pulses to bounce back. So here's the play-by-play. The plane is up there scanning the jungle, just blasting this incredible number of laser pulses down. Now, sure, most of them are just going to bounce off leaves and branches, but, and this is the really clever part, a small fraction of them manage to sneak through all the little gaps and actually hit the ground. The sensor times the return trip of every single one, and then some powerful software works its magic, digitally removing everything that's a tree or a bush, leaving behind only the true contours of the forest floor. And what you get is this stunningly detailed 3D map of the bare earth. So what happens when you take this incredible technology and apply it all across the Maya lowlands? Well, you don't just add a few new sites to the map. You have to pretty much throw the old map in the trash and draw a completely new one from scratch. Let's use Tikal in Guatemala as our prime example. It is, without a doubt, one of the most famous and well-studied Maya cities in the world. For decades, archaeologists painstakingly mapped it on foot, hacking through the jungle, believing they had a really solid idea of its size. And the number they came up with? 16 square kilometers. For years, that was the figure you'd read in textbooks. That was the official size of this great Maya capital. And, it seemed impressive enough at the time. But then, the LiDAR planes flew over. And the data that came back wasn't just interesting. It was absolutely staggering. It revealed a city on a scale that, honestly, no one had ever suspected was possible. The new estimate for the Tikal metropolitan area isn't 16. It's 527 square kilometers. Let that sink in. To give you some perspective, that's a sprawling urban landscape 38 times bigger than ancient Rome. It wasn't just a city. It was a megalopolis, hidden under the trees this whole time. And look, it's not just Tikal, not by a long shot. The first major LiDAR survey in Guatemala revealed over 60,000 previously unknown structures. We're talking about houses, massive agricultural terraces for farming, defensive walls and forts, and the roads that connected everything. It was a bustling, heavily populated, and totally engineered landscape. So what this really means is our entire picture has to shift. The Maya weren't just living in these isolated ceremonial centers surrounded by a wild jungle.
No way. They engineered their entire environment on a massive scale. They created this dense, interconnected network of cities and suburbs and farms that supported millions and millions of people. But, building a civilization of that size in a tropical forest, that comes with some immense challenges. Which brings us to their engineering genius, and specifically, how they were absolute masters of controlling water. This was really the fundamental problem they had to solve. The Maya lowlands are basically a huge limestone shelf that acts like a sponge. Rainwater just drains right through it, almost immediately. There are very few rivers or lakes. On top of that, they had to deal with a dry season that could drag on for months. So how on earth did they get enough water to support these gigantic cities? They engineered this brilliant arsenal of solutions. They paved their giant plazas at just the right angles to act as massive rainwater catchments. They funneled every single precious drop through canals into these huge man-made reservoirs. The ones at Tikal could hold 900,000 cubic meters of water. They even had sophisticated sand filtration systems to purify it. And for individual homes, they carved thousands of underground cisterns called chultones straight out of the limestone bedrock to store rainwater right where they needed it. And this is where LiDAR becomes so critical again. It doesn't just show us buildings, it shows us the subtle slope of the land, the faint outlines of ancient canals, the exact placement of every reservoir. For the very first time, archaeologists can see the entire citywide water system all at once, and you can really appreciate the astonishing level of planning that went into it. And this little story just brilliantly illustrates their genius. So, modern hydraulic engineers were brought in to design a brand new drainage system for the Tikal National Park. They ran all their computer models, used all their modern tech, and came up with what they thought was the most efficient plan. Well, it turned out to be the exact same layout the Maya had designed and built over 1,500 years earlier. They had already figured it out, they got it perfectly right. It's so clear that this technology is kicking off a brand new golden age for Maya archaeology. The story is far, far from over. When you boil it all down, what this shows us is that LiDAR isn't just adding more dots to an old map. It's revealing a fundamentally different kind of civilization, one that was more densely populated, more interconnected, and way more advanced in its landscape engineering than we ever gave it credit for. The book on the Maya is not closed. A whole new chapter is being written as we speak, from 30,000 feet up in the sky. And all of this leaves us with one last, really fascinating question. If a civilization on this kind of epic scale could lie hidden in plain sight, completely concealed by a bunch of trees for hundreds of years, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What else is still out there, just waiting to be discovered?